Hello, everybody, and welcome to Vinyl Power. That's right, the podcast where we talk about our love for vinyl records and share it with you. Join us each week as we bring you the latest in vinyl releases, what's in our vinyl collection, and wrap it up with epic vinyl. That's right here, each and every week, with your hosts, the Reverend Jeff Kelley and Kurt Harris. Once again, welcome to Vinyl Power. Welcome, everybody. We are back. Episode number 6 already. Number 6 we are on. That's right. And I am the Reverend Jeff Kelley, and I want to thank you for being here with Vinyl Power. That man over there is Kurt, the Music Man Harris, coming to you live from North Kakalaka. You survived the hurricanes out there, finally, I see. The storms have abided, and there's a lot of destruction and stuff out there. God help those people, but I see your place survived okay. Your records are all right?
I kept the records above the flood line, and we did survive. My feet might get a little wet here and there, but we're hanging in there. The sound room is here, and records have been playing all week. And shout out to all those that have had to deal with such inclement weather and so many problems for sure. We're certainly blessed where we're at, but another great week, October 12th, Thursday, episode of Vinyl Power.
That's right, number 6 already. Hey, let's take a look at what's coming out on vinyl this week. There's a bunch of stuff here, so we're kind of blow through them. But the Bare Naked Ladies, they're releasing Gordon. Beck is coming out with Colors. Billy Corgan has Ogalala. I swear that's what it says. Exhumed has Death Revenge. Hans Zimmer is releasing Dunkirk. The Iron Chick, you can't stay here.
No, you can't.
No, you can't. Jeff Russo is releasing the Fargo Season 3 original soundtrack. King Cruel, the Is. Knuckle Puck, that's right. Shapeshifter.
Woohoo!
Kurt Vile, that's right. Courtney Barnett has got a lot of sea lice. Yeah, that's what it says. I swear to God.
Okay.
Missy Elliott, the cookbook. New O, I know that's how it's spelled, says Chain Up the Sun. Pop, etc. with Routine. Rome, as in roaming around, has The Greatest Heights and Nosedives. Best and Worst compilation, maybe. Robert Plant has Carry Fire. Something Corporate played in space. The best of Something Corporate. Hey, that's probably pretty good. St. Vincent. I like best of albums. I really do. Greatest Hits is one thing. Best ofs is a different thing. Mass Education is coming out from St. Vincent. The Front Bottoms is coming out with.
Oh, yeah. Front Bottoms.
Going Gray. That's right. The Lillingtons with Stella
Perfect. That's fine.
Exactly. Yeah. The White Stripes with another one. And the White Stripes is coming out with ST as well. Hey, they've got a third one with White Blood Cells. And finally, coming out this week, various artists, they're releasing The Return of the Living Dead, the original soundtrack. Now, that's probably a cool album.
Yeah, no, that's probably excellent, right?
That's probably an excellent
especially
album.
For October.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. There's a lot of spooky records. As a matter of fact, there's a big record show coming up here in Roseville, California this weekend on Sunday, and I've just been tearing and saving my pennies and getting all prepared for this to go and make a crash on it, because I'm looking for strange things like the Monster Mash and Twisted Christmas and Run DMC's Christmas album. There's a bunch of weird stuff I'm just out there looking for that in a place where there's 100 vendors, there's a good chance some of this stuff is in there, and it's not going to really be all that expensive because they've got to stay competitive with Discogs. Otherwise, I could just come home and order it there. So I've gotten online, and I've actually taken notes as to what this stuff will cost me online with shipping hoping to get it here, and I'm not going to overpay for it. I'm just not going to do that. I love living in the digital age where you can get good records without getting ripped off.
Absolutely.
You know, it's really kind of important that you know the value of what you're buying before you buy it. Otherwise, you can have $1,000 in a $300 collection. You know, this whole grading system is so sketchy. I mean, I have a ton of covers that are just trash where the albums are just perfect, and my 1.4 gram stylus plays them with I don't have to put no penny on it. You know what I mean? My setup plays the albums perfectly. So, the whole grading system, yes, is very subjective. Play the album, see what plays, see what it sounds like. I've got other ones where the covers are fantastic and it's just pop, crash, scratch city. I don't know what happened to the damn thing. What was it playing on? Probably my old Victrola box. Anyhow, let's get into what we were doing here, and that's Vinyl Power. We're talking about our love for vinyl records. Kurt, I got to ask you, buddy, what you been spinning this week?
Great question, Reverend Jeff. I don't think I could have had a more epic week. My beginning of the week, I always like to come up with some kind of a theme, and for this week, it was British, and it was the influence. It was you go back to the very early 60s and you go back to the Beatles and the Kinks and the Rolling Stones and the Who and all the bands that started to really have an influence. And yet mostly at that time, most of the records were sold as 45s. They were singles. They came out in 45s. We weren't really in the LP era yet. The LP era really came about a little later in the 60s, and I thought that would be a great theme to go with. The British bands that really made an impact worldwide on pop rock music and really kicked off the massive contribution to LPs. And so the first one, oh my gosh, I mean, really, how can you get more epic? Jimi Hendrix, Are You Experienced? Everybody knows about Jimi Hendrix, absolute master of the Stratocaster. Probably the most organic sounding guitar player I've personally ever heard. Well, he was taken by Chas Chandler, former player with the Animals, who basically had seen him and knew a lot about him, took him to London, put him together with a lot of people, including Kit Lambert, the Who's manager, got him in the studio, and out came this album. I think it's an absolutely amazing album. This one,
I have that one,
and this one,
that was my first repurchase back into the Hendrix world. Was that album there?
Well, it's a perfect way to go. Obviously, there's only 3 studio albums released in Hendrix's lifetime and 1 live album, but only 3 studio albums, and this is the first one, 1967. And one interesting thing about it, among many, is the fact that the Sgt. Pepper album, it was released, and 2 days later, Jimi Hendrix, with the Experience, played their first gig in London. Who shows up at the gig but Paul McCartney, among others? 2 days after the release of Sgt. Pepper, Jimi Hendrix, without actually practicing it, said, "Hey, the first song we're going to play is Sgt. Pepper." And so they opened the show with Sgt. Pepper, an album that had only been released 2 days earlier, and Paul McCartney in the crowd. And Paul said he absolutely loved it. He said he felt honored by it. So I just, for me,
you try that today, some record studio would be suing the crap out of you.
More than
played
likely,
our album on the album. Yeah, you didn't have permission to do that, mister. You're going to pay us.
This album is extremely influential. It changed the way so many people, including like those like Eric Clapton, actually played guitar. You just can't get enough Jimi Hendrix. And I'll say one last thing about this. For those that don't know, everywhere Jimi Hendrix went, he took a guitar with him. When he went out to eat, a lot of times, he would actually have his guitar with him. So the guy just pretty much lived with his guitar, and it showed. An amazing album, and it was a great way to start the week. After that album, the next one I was thinking of, well, one of the first ever supergroups, Cream, with Disraeli Gears. So here you have 1967 again, Eric Clapton, Jack Bruce, Ginger Baker, a monumental record, one that climbed the charts in both countries. It actually reached number 4 in the U.S., number 5 in the U.K. Sunshine of Your Love, you know, one great track after another. Obviously, this great cover. This is their second record. And again, 1967, such an influential year for music in so many reasons. And this is one of them. So moving on from that, I get an album here, which is actually from 1968. And it's the first ever Deep Purple album.
The shades of Deep Purple, absolutely.
And this is, you know, probably the most psychedelic of the Deep Purple records overall. And you would just have to say that, you know, the song Hush obviously was, you know, a huge commercial success at its time. And, you know, Ritchie Blackmore, actually this was Rod Evans singing before they had Ian Gillan brought in. So you have Rod Evans here. And once again, this album really influenced.
Look at those afros, man.
Yeah.
White dudes with afros. I mean, check that out. You couldn't get that. They would tell you. They would say you were appropriating people's culture if y'all tried that today.
And you know, coming on the heels, being 1968, you know, obviously the Great Revolution really came in 67, but this was more revolutionary to the hard rock side of psychedelia. And Hush was such a big song that it propelled this album to #4 in the US. It actually was not a big hit in the UK, which was interesting, but it was a big hit in the US. And another thing on this album is they did a cover version of the Beatles' Help. So another connection to the Beatles along this album. But yes, 1968, first ever Deep Purple album, Shades of Deep Purple. And so for the fourth and final from what I was listening to this week, again, we reach into 1967 with Pink Floyd's first album, Piper at the Gates of Dawn. This is the Syd Barrett record, as all Pink Floyd fans know. It was recorded at Abbey Road Studios. At the time period, obviously, 1967, same year as Sgt. Pepper. You wanted to somehow diversify. You're in the same studio as the Beatles. What do you do differently? So they used all different microphones, different techniques. And this is probably the preeminent early psychedelic record. And like I said, it's the Syd Barrett record.
And you know, that had to be hard because back then the producers are like, no, do it more like the Beatles. Come on, look at their records. Do it more like the Beatles, you little bastards. Do it.
You're exactly right. And they couldn't have been further away from the Beatles, of course. Right. And one thing that's really interesting about this record is, unlike the Deep Purple record, which sold well in the United States but wasn't so popular in England, this record actually reached #4 on the UK charts, but only hit 131 in USA. So it was very overlooked here. It wasn't a record that had any kind of actual radio type of, back in those days it would have been AM, I assume, but any type of AM hit. So it was very overlooked for its time period, and but it's a seminal record. It's, again, 1967.
Having a hit on AM, and now coming up, Pink Floyd with a
Pink Floyd with Astronomy Domine, or The Gnome. Yeah, I mean, there was just nothing on here. Interstellar Overdrive. I mean, great songs for Pink Floyd fans, but yes, nothing that really was going to get much radio play. But in England, and mainly because Pink Floyd tended to be like the house band of the very popular UFO Club in London. And that was just like the hip, happening place to be in 1967 when Pink Floyd was playing, and they would have extend their songs out to 20 minutes or 30 minutes with noises, and they had all the original psychedelic light show, and well, you can imagine what the audience was into. And anyways, you know, Jimi Hendrix, Deep Purple, Cream, Pink Floyd, riding right on the heels of Sgt. Pepper. Probably the most influential time for pop rock music, and the changing of pop rock music over from single-based, putting out a 2.5 to 3 minute radio hit and selling the single, to actually selling an album. So that was my theme for the week, and that's what I spent my week listening to. And I have to ask you, almighty Reverend Jeff, what records were you spinning on your awesome vintage stereo system this week?
Yeah, I'm looking at maybe even getting a little more vintage than what I've got.
You are.
Right here, yes, sir. The Doors live at the Hollywood Bowl.
Love it.
The original recording was July 5th in 1968. Psychedelic rock, that's right. Live at the Hollywood Bowl. It was done, it wasn't released until, though, 1987. The full version of the concert was released October in 2012, also on the LP. The video of the concert is also available on DVD for those people that like that kind of stuff. I just sat here and listened to this thing, and I got to tell you, it was difficult. This was a very, very difficult record for me to sit here and listen to. Jim was so far gone. The band was great. The music was fantastic. That was not the problem. But Jim was on one of his famous walking around heaven trips while they're in the middle of playing this concert, and the crowd seemed to love it. I mean, every single cut, every track on here, the crowd's just screaming and loving Jim for what he's doing, but the band is just like, Jim, we're in Hollywood, Jim. You want to play a song here too? There's only 6 songs, 6 tracks on the entire album. The first side has Wake Up on it and Light My Fire, and they do manage to get through those. But side 2 has Unknown Soldier, A Little Game, The Hill Dwellers, and Spanish Caravan, and I didn't really recognize 2 of them. I don't know what really happened. It was if you're a Doors fan, this is great, but if you're the first time you're going out to buy a Doors record and this is the one you see, you might want to skip it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Just put it in your collection later on once you love the Doors, but I definitely would not start with that monster. Up after that came probably the most sold live album of the 70s.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
Comes Alive. I mean, this album, I mean, this guy can make that thing talk. He's like Peter Griffin. Hey, and while you're at it, can you bring that thing that makes your guitar sound like a kid? It's a double live album and released in 1976, one of the best-selling albums in the United States and considered to be many of the finest live rock recordings of all time. There's my epic record tonight. I might have to battle that out with this one, but I got to tell you, this one really, really, really was good. Released January 6, 1976, debuted on the charts at 191 and reached the #1 on the Billboard Top 200 the week ending April 10th, 1976. So, wow, came out in January. By April, it was sitting on top. That's pretty good. Held it for 10 weeks running. So if you want a good live album to just sit around and listen to, although I kind of do have a complaint about this one. This is one of those asshole producers who put side 1 and side 4 on the same record. Don't do that. Don't do that. I don't want to unsleeve another record to listen to side 2, okay?
Right.
Don't do that. Put side 1 and side 2 on the same record, please.
I agree.
Thank you. That's just one of my pet peeves. It's just
I agree. I'm with you on that one, Reverend Jeff.
You know, and it's a gatefold as it is, so it's all wonky, and you're just, you know. So please don't do that, producers. Well, side 1 and side 2 go on the same record, so I can get up and flip it over. Yeah, I know you were setting it up for dual decks and some jackwagon DJ to be able to have 9 albums going at one time, but I'm not that guy. So I finally had to. Which one is this one here? Oh, I have them backwards here. That's okay. Yeah, we'll do it that way. Worldwide Live. That's right. Woo-hoo! The Scorpions. Oh my goodness.
Love that record.
Yeah, it's a fantastic by the German rock band The Scorpions. Released in 1985 when things were getting weak. The Scorpions were still rocking it. I mean, they really were. It was produced by Dieter Dierks. If you don't know who that is, well, you don't know German rock and roll. They toured that year all the way through California as well as Paris, France, and Cologne, West Germany. This dude is a great hurricane. Rock you like a hurricane. Yeah, that's that. And it's live and it's kick ass on this album. And I turned it up to 6, and my poor little bookshelves had a little problem, so I had to turn it back down. But yeah, this is a fantastic album. If you're looking for live stuff, Worldwide Live from the Scorpions is a really, really fun. Again, it is a double album, so you get a whole lot of rock for your money.
Uli Roth, Klaus Meine, a hurricane of heavy-duty jam.
Here I am, a heavy-duty jam. Yeah, definitely. Now, this isn't for some people's taste, but it's definitely for mine. Wasp, Live in the Raw. It was the first live album by Wasp, with their 4th overall album, released in 1987. Again, really late for the blood rock, for the real grungy stuff to be out there. But this really is a solid heavy metal album. The Manimal, Harder, Faster. I mean, really, the Love Machine. I don't need no doctor. Yeah, I mean, it really it's a lot of fun to sit and listen to. It's got 11 tracks on the single album, and I really wish they would retour this one, because I'd probably go to see it. I'm really, really looking forward to the show this weekend. Hopefully, I can pick up some more Wasp, because I only have this and The Last Commander in my collection. So I'm really looking to kind of up my game with that. So that's what I was spending this week on my collection. Hey, I got to ask you, what epic record did you bring along this week for us there, Kurt?
Well, going along, yeah, exactly. Going along with that theme, I guess I'm bringing one to the table here on October 12th, which is our 6th show on this Thursday. And it's one that I don't know if I can ever top in terms of influential. And it's the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper, 1967, listed as the #1 record all time by Rolling Stone magazine's top 500 records all time. I mean, I don't even know where you begin with this record, from the technological advancements, the expertise that went into this record. They did things in the studio that had never been done before. They mic'd equipment. They used different equipment. They mixed so many different genres of music. It's a very special record. Even the Oxford Encyclopedia lists this as the most influential album of all time. It was #1 in the USA, #1 in the UK. It was #1 in the UK for, I believe, 27 consecutive weeks, 15 in the US. It's listed as being basically the first concept album. Many people point to this as being the start of progressive music. It's a masterpiece. It's timeless. I played it a few different times. Even my parents came and listened to it. And of course, they'd heard the whole thing throughout the years. But even they sitting and listening to it again, you can't help but realize I was kind of trying to describe some of the reasons that the album is such an important album, that it's not the same as what came before it, and how it changed the landscape of pop rock music after it. And they really got it, and they understood it themselves. In every way, even going to the Grammy Awards itself, where it was the 1967 was the 10th annual Grammy Award. And this was the first pop rock album to win Album of the Year. It won, I believe it was 5 Grammys that year, including, technical expertise, recording, just in every way. The amazing cover art, which is timeless. I mean, it's the Beatles. We know, like, the first, if you want to put it that way, the first boy band, right? And the one that everybody wanted to copy, because, the music studios years later said, well, that's the way to make the money. So if we could just put together 4 or 5 guys, get them in some cool haircuts and some cool clothes, and sing some, songs that the girls will like, will
Just
have
do it
something.
like
Well,
the bloody Beatles. Just do it.
and that really was the early Beatles, right? When you go to like those albums like Meet the Beatles, even as far, as Help. But when this came out, they had complete control of their own destiny, and this was their destiny. I basically love every Beatles album, and my favorite might even be Abbey Road. I might even have a favorite over this one, but the influential nature of this album, and if you go back to interviews with John Lennon, with McCartney, George Harrison, Ringo Starr, they will tell you that part of making this album was inspired by the amazing, eccentric Brian Wilson and his work on Pet Sounds, and actually Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention, their album Freak Out. So they were also inspired. It wasn't pulled out of thin air, but what they did was something new. It was innovative. It was different. And along with the other albums that I brought to the table in terms I was listening this week, and that's why I took a little extra time with them, because they're all truly epic in their own right. But this one certainly, for its time period and its influence going forward in the pop rock music industry, is one that set a new stage and a new standard. And so that's why for Thursday, October 12th, and the 6th show of Vinyl Power, which I hope everybody is enjoying, and if you're not, you should be, this is the album that came to the table. And it's one that if you haven't spun it lately, give it a spin. Really pay attention to it, and
I'm still boycotting the Beatles. I don't know why. I have not in my lifetime. I have bought the White Album so many times. I have just been boycotting buying the Beatles albums this time, because every time I pick one up, they're $17 used, and I just don't want to. I don't want to spend that for them. So
yeah, you may come back around at some point. And just one little future note. I should mention that this is the remaster that came out I think it was 2015, and they just came out with a brand new remaster remix of this album. I haven't bought it yet, but I am considering it, because if you buy the special edition, which is on 4 CDs, a DVD, and a Blu-ray 5.1 mix, I'd love to hear that, but it sells for about $113, so that's why I haven't bought it yet. And just the last thing I'll say.
Plus, Yoko gets part of that money, doesn't she?
I hate to think about that.
Yeah, man, I don't put no money in Yoko's pocket.
And you'll probably hear this from us down the line, of course. But I believe November 16th. So just basically a month away from now, November 16th, they have the re-releasing remastered Paul McCartney and Wings records, and they are just for your own knowledge, they're $16.99 each, brand new remasters. That's not a bad price. So I already have my favorites on order, like Band on the Run, Ram. So I've ordered a couple myself. I hope they sound amazing. And I know I went a little long on this, but an epic record. And Jeff, at some point you might get back in and you might decide to spin a few Beatles records again.
I will.
Everybody goes through stages, right? Happens to all of us.
Yeah, they weren't high on my priority. Like I said, I've probably spent close to $300 buying the White Album over and over and over again from wearing them out. So I mean, I just at this point I'm like, I'll just wait. I've already bought it 9 times. I mean, what's another time, right?
And as all my good friends know, I keep all my records in 4mm plastic. But just while I have a moment, just to open it to that fabulous gatefold picture on the inside, I think it's one of the most fun, pictures of the Beatles on an album. Those clothes, obviously, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Just a lot of fun, and that's my epic record for this week. And so, Jeff, now that I have finally finished that, I have to ask you, what is your epic record for Thursday, October 12th, the 6th Vinyl Power episode, blowing people's minds across the world with our musical knowledge of vinyl records? What are you bringing to the table?
That's right. Well, as everybody knows, as you can tell, I've been listening to Live this week, and I brought probably my favorite out of my collection. I don't care what anybody else says about it. The Eagles Live from 1980. 1980. It is technically the first live album by the rock band The Eagles, 2 LPs, released November 7th, 1980. The Eagles were already breaking up after an argument between Glenn Frey and Don Fedler on July 31st, 1980. So this was being released as everybody's, at arms with each other. The band owed Elektra and Asylum Records one more album, and they fulfilled that obligation with the release of performances from Hotel California and the Long Run tours. And then that was it. So this literally is the last recording when these fellas liked each other. And I got to be honest with you, it's amazing. It's a shame that egos do what they do to great bands, but with this particular album, there's just so much amazing. They bring the guys that came in and helped them write the songs, actually came in and played instruments on the songs. It really ended up being more of an experience than it is an album. I mean, when you sit down and you listen to all 4 sides of this, it's like being there. I mean, it literally, well, if you got a decent enough system, anyhow. I don't know about you people with that compressed
Their production
audio
values were extremely high. They would settle for nothing less than the best. No matter what you think of the Eagles as a band, they settled for nothing less than the best. It certainly shows on that live record.
I mean, and all the vinyl, these particular vinyl records are very, very heavy. They weren't, even, 1980, they were already using the recycled albums. And, I've been doing a lot of reading on that with some of these really light records in the early 80s. They were literally taking the paper fold to everything and throwing it in the recycler. So you could have bits of paper and stuff inside those really thin 100, or was it 90 gram records they went down as far as
yeah,
with garbage in them. So, consider that when you're buying those periods of records to make sure that you got a nice thick heavy record in your hand and not some recycled piece of garbage. I don't know who in their right mind would have thought that paper, it'll just burn out during the recycle process, right? I don't know. Would you put dirt in with your filet mignon and hope it burns out during the cooking process? I certainly wouldn't. The band was already, they broke up during a concert in Long Beach, California, in 1980. That served as a fundraiser. And that was it. That was as they were originally produced, they were done. They rejected a $2 million offer from the label to do 2 more songs. And they just said no, they didn't even want the money. That's just sad. That's what happens when egos get involved with great music.
Absolutely.
I mean, we've seen it happen. How many times have we seen great artists walk away from great bands because they feel they're not getting the credit that's due them? It's like, well, who told you that? I mean, everybody loves everybody for a certain reason. Just because you're not getting the immediate love that you get, be happy that you're getting love at all. And with that, I want to say, speaking of love at all, let's say hi to the few people that are out there watching us live. Gary and Whitney White are out there, of course. Lance Windsor was first in the house. And James Dalrymple. Hey, I'll have me a Dalrymple and Coke. He's floating around out there today as well. I am sure that Christopher is out there watching live, but he doesn't have a login, so we'll say hello to him as well as Rod Dupree.
Hey,
so
Chris.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, Rod.
That's right. Potatoes are actually vegetables. And with that, we're going to get that sad going away music going because it's time to end the show. You know what is coming up, though, something to look forward to, is one of our first in-studio guests. We'll be doing that here real soon, probably about episode 11 or 12. So that'll be neat to have that going as well. Find us at Facebook by simply typing in the search bar at Vinyl Power Podcast. That'll take you right out to our page. You can click like. Speaking of clicking like, hit subscribe, the little bell notification so that you get notified when we're on the air, which is Thursdays, 5 p.m. specifically in Pacific time. That makes it 8 p.m. Eastern as well. Thanks, guys, for being here. We'll be back next week with more epic vinyl and hopefully great tales from the record show on Sunday. Maybe I'll go live from the page. We'll see how much epicness is actually there. And with that, for the great Kurt Harris, the music band, I'm the Reverend Jeff Kelley. This has been Vinyl Power number 6.